Yesterday we spoke about Yaakov wrestles with the angel. Now, part of the idea, I had a vicious argument last night with somebody who told me that, hey Moshe, somebody told, not with my wife, Moshe, no, with somebody who only a married man can understand that. The what do you call it? An argument about whether this Yaakov wrestling with the angel, whether there's because many of the commentaries take it on a symbolic level, it symbolizes the Yetzer Hara, and he's trying to wake Yaakov. That nobody disagrees with. But the question is, was there a physical fight going on between? Because the Torah describes him as a man, and he fought with the man. And the Malbim, was one of the classic commentaries, says clearly the Malach was in the image of a man, and there was a physical fight going on. A physical wrestling match going on, which we spoke about. But there is obviously much more depth as far as the Satan trying to trip up Yaakov and the Jewish people in the future, and so on and so forth. But the reason that Yaakov does this is that Yaakov, now, and I'll show you where I came to this from, because if you take a look at page 176, so then Yaakov sees Esau is coming, 7 lines from the bottom. Vayishlach Yaakov, could I trouble somebody just to close that door over there? Thanks, Aryeh. Vayishlach Yaakov eino vayarvin Esau bo v'imo arba me'os ish. Yaakov raises his eyes and he sees that Esau's coming with 400 men. Vayachatz es hayelodim aleya ve'al rochav asher shvachos. He gathers everybody together. Now this should beg a question, because we had learned originally that Yaakov had divided them up into 2 camps. So if he divided up into 2 camps, how come they're all in one camp? Remember, it said he divided up into 2 camps, and he said, well, if Esau wipes out one camp, then at least the other one will survive. And now all of a sudden everybody's together. So why is everybody together? That question is something I noticed a couple of years ago. Like, well, what's going on? I thought he divided them up. So I started looking around. I found the commentaries actually point out that this was a result of that wrestling match with the angel. When he's wrestling with the archangel of Esau, there was a message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God is showing Yaakov Avinu that he's not going to be able to defeat you. You see, even his archangel can't defeat you. At that point, Yaakov has nothing to fear, so he puts everybody together. There's no longer a need to divide them into 2 camps. In other words, there was a message to Yaakov. Among the other messages, the message is that you're not going to be defeated by Esau. He's not going to wipe you out, and therefore he consolidates everybody. Then he sees Esau, and he bows down 7 times. Right, till he reaches Esau. And that's also a lesson to us. If you look 2 lines from the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom. Who of our leaf to him, Yaakov passed in front of everybody. Vayishtachu arza sheva pa'amim ad gishto ad ochiv. So he bows down 7 times till he reaches his brother. And each time he bows down, that softens Esau up. You see your brother, as much as you like to see your brother bowing down to you, but each time he does it and he's bowing down, and Esau is softening up, because, whatever hatred there is, whatever residual hatred there is slowly but surely being eradicated by Yaakov bowing down. Each time Esau is filled with a little bit more compassion for Yaakov. So then we get to a major concept. Vayoratz Esau likraso, vayichabkehu, he hugs him. Vayipol al tzavora vayishakeu vayivku. He falls, they embrace each other, and he kisses him, and they cry. So there are many tongue-in-cheek explanations here. He kisses him and they cry. Esau was crying, what am I doing hugging the Jew? Right? And how did I end up hugging the Jew? And the Jew is crying because if an Esau is hugging him, he realizes this is going to cost me. So that's only tongue-in-cheek, right? But if you take a look at Rashi, there's a fundamental here. Rashi says, 3 lines, it's the left column of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Vayishakehu, nokud olav. There are dots over this word. Now, if you look in the Torah, the regular vowels that are underneath the word do not appear in a Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah is written without the vowels. But these dots that we find periodically in the Torah, you look at the word, those dots, if you look in a Sefer Torah, you'll see dots over the word Vayishakehu. These dots are inserted in a Sefer Torah. When the Sofer writes a Sefer Torah, so he puts in, he inserts these dots, which means that there's something to teach us. The dots are there to teach something that goes beyond the plain meaning. So Rashi says, V'yesh cholkim b'dover hazeh b'braisa. There is a dispute in the Brisa. What are these dots here to teach us? Yesh shedorshu, second line from the bottom. Some say, Nikuda zulomar shelo nishako b'chol libo. One opinion is that this is to emphasize Esau did not hug him with a full heart. He did not kiss him with a full heart. I mean, he kissed him, but okay, we'll make peace, right? But he's not fully there. Amar Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, famous Rashbi, Reb Shimon ben Yochai from the Lag Bomer story. He says, Halacha hi biyadua she'Esau sonei liYaakov. It is a well-known halacha that Esau hates Yaakov. Ela shenichmeru rachamav boso shav v'neshako b'chol libo. He did kiss him with his whole heart. In other words, the dots are there to teach you the novelty. The novelty is, the chiddush here, is that he kissed him with his full heart. Because there's a well-known halacha that Esau hates Yaakov, which is really a projection of anti-Semitism in general. Why do the Goyim hate us? You know what the answer is? A one-word answer, which is? That's the answer. The answer is because. Everything we've tried doesn't work. We try to integrate into their society. The Jews are taking over, right? We stick by ourselves. They're like, oh, the Jews always stick together, right? No matter what you try to do, there's a inborn and ingrained hatred of the Jewish people by the anti-Semites of the world. Doesn't mean every guy hates the Jews, but the anti-Semites of the world hate the Jews. Why? Because. That's why. That's why, Reb Shimon, don't you see something about the terminology? The terminology should seem puzzling to you. Reb Shimon bar Yochai says, look at the terminology he uses. Halacha hi biyadua, it's a well-known halacha she'Esau sonei liYaakov. Which halacha is it, gentlemen? With the goy's keeping halacha? When hey, I'm going to keep the halacha today. I'm going to put on tefillin and hate the Jews. Which halacha is that? It's a halacha that Esau hates Yaakov. What halacha is it? What halacha? Why was it halacha? The answer is it's not a halacha. Means the same way that we have halachas. It's a halacha. We're not allowed to eat pork. Why? Because Hashem said you can't. There are many different explanations. But ultimately, even if you don't agree with the explanation or understand the explanation, ultimately it's because that is the halacha. There's halacha, you can't wear wool and linen. Why? Because. Right? So there are deep explanations for it, but ultimately it's a halacha. It is a reality. Call it a spiritual reality if you want. It's a built into the spiritual reality of the running of the world is that we have to keep these halachas. Why? Because. The same way the anti-Semite hates the Jew. Why? Because. There are many explanations why God did it that way. He did it that way in order that Esau and Yaakov, that's why they're born as twins. Because if twins are compatible, twins are friends with each other, it's a very close connection. But if twins if there's a resentment, then it's the strongest resentment. There's no feud like a family feud, right? What's it, the Hatfields and the McCoys, right? That wasn't a family feud, that was just a feud. But this is a family feud, that's the best one, right? So Esau and Yaakov, HaKadosh Baruch Hu purposely does it and brings about Yaakov deceiving Esau so that Esau should resent Yaakov, so that through history, the anti-Semites of history, when the Jews get out of line, the anti-Semites are there to keep us back in line. That's the way the world works. And so all the books that are written explaining anti-Semitism, why there's anti-Semitism, those books are excellent books, really excellent books if you ever want to start a Lag BaOmer fire. So you use those books, they kindle very well, right? If you have a wobbly table at home, right? If the book is the right size, you wedge it in under your table, right? That's what those books are good for. They're not good for anything else because there is no explanation. Because everything we've tried, they have in America now on the college campuses, there's anti-Semitism, and there's all sorts of, the Jews go and explain everything, what's it called in Hebrew, it's called, if we would just explain ourselves and give us a chance, and you see all the benefits that we've had, so it just creates more. Even the state of Israel, which was supposed to solve the problem of anti-Semitism. That was the whole idea of having a state for the Jewish people, and that way there won't be Holocaust, and we won't be persecuted, and we could go to have our own homeland, right? Well, just ask the United Nations Security Council whether or not that's taking care of anti-Semitism. They could butcher people in the Ukraine, and they could butcher people all over Africa, and if one Jew in Israel builds a balcony in Ramat Shlomo, so the United Nations Security Council meets to condemn Israel. If one reporter gets shot, who probably needed shooting anyway, but if one reporter from Al Jazeera gets shot, so all of a sudden everybody's all up in arms about one reporter who got shot, where it's a suffix whether or not it was an Israeli bullet to begin with, And if it wasn't an Israeli, it may not have been an Israeli bullet. B, if it was an Israeli bullet, probably by accident. And if it was on purpose, so that's a good oichet. But at the end of the day, in Russia, where they're going and trashing cities left, right, and center, and committing what anybody would call war crimes, and all of a sudden, listen, we need some oil, and in Africa, where I don't know what the Hutsis and Tutsis were doing to each other in Africa over there slaughtering, nobody says a word, well, they're Africans, who cares, in Israel, if one Palestinian gets beaten up by in England, the BBC reports that there was a scuffle. A scuffle, which started with a terrorist attack. What we call a terrorist attack, they call a scuffle. They reported it, actually. There was a terrorist attack, and the Israelis shot there was a scuffle, and a Palestinian got shot. That's how they reported it. What they call a scuffle, we call a terrorist attack. So why is that? Because it's anti-Semitism. And there's a deeper reason for it. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who himself, remember the story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? How did he end up in a cave? How did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai end up in a cave? He wasn't just hiking in the mountains. Why did he end up in a cave? Because there was a meeting of Jewish leaders, and they were discussing the Roman policies. Romans built bridges, and they built marketplaces, and they had bathhouses. So Rav Yehuda got up and said, wow, the Romans, look what good things they did. And Rabbi Yossi was silent. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said everything they did for themselves. They built bridges so they could collect taxes. They built marketplaces for immorality. And they built bathhouses so that they could enjoy themselves. And the Romans heard that somebody's criticizing them, and he became a fugitive. So first he was hiding in a beis medrash with his son. And then when the intensity of the pursuit increased, so then he and his son ran off to a cave, and they stayed in the cave for 12 years. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai knows very well what anti-Semitism is. He himself was a recipient of on the receiving end of some very powerful anti-Semitism. So he says it's a well-known halacha that Esau hates Yaakov, and that's a fact. And there's no way to cure it. There is no way to cure anti-Semitism. The best technique and the best method is what Yaakov Avinu shows us the entire time. Send them gifts, bribe them, bow down. Don't start flexing muscles. We are in exile. We cannot flex muscles. We're the mouse that roared, right? Don't be the mouse that roared. Just defer to Esau. By the way, the whole idea of the gifts, when Esau says he doesn't need the gifts, okay, we'll see in a second. Okay, so Vayisa Esena Vayaris Anoshi Vesayalad. The Esau sees the women and the children. Of course, he sees the women first. Vayomer mi elelach. How did you end up with all this? Now you have over here the epic meeting between what Esau represents and what Yaakov represents. What is Judaism? I mean, you guys have been to enough homes for Shabbos meals. What is the frum home built on? There's one, it's built on family. The frum home is built on family. Family is the set. Yeah, you've probably noticed that there are more kids in frum homes. There are more kids than kids that you would find in homes in Phoenix, or in Denver, right, or in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They're generally the numbers in the homes of frum kids. There are probably 7 or 8 kids is very average. I remember reading about a basketball player, Bill Cartwright, played for the Bulls, so he had 4 kids. And everybody's talking about what a big family he has. And Bill Cartwright was saying, yeah, it gets pretty noisy. Right? Noisy. The guy's probably got, the guy living, the basketball player, a multimillionaire living in a mansion. Each kid probably doesn't have his own room. He has his own wing of the house. And he says it's noisy in the house. You've been in frum homes, where there are 11 kids living in 2.5 rooms. Right? 11 kids living in 2.5 rooms. Nobody even, it's all built on Yaakov represents the ideal of the family. What is Esau? Esau is victory, conquest, 400 men who are looking for adventure, for excitement. That's the Esau world versus the Yaakov world. So they all approach and they bow down. And then Esau says in line 5, Vayomer milecha kol hamachane hazer asher pagoshti. Who is that big camp that I met? All those animals, everything that was. Vayomer limtzo chen beinei adoni. Yaakov says, well, that's just I want to find favor. I sent you a gift. Vayomer Esau, yesh li rav. I have so much. You ever hear anybody say that? Like, especially if they become president of the United States, right? I have so much. I am so rich. Mr. Trump, that was one of his classic, I am so rich, right? I am so rich. That's Esau. But Yomer Yeshli Rav, I got so much. Achi yehilecha asher lach. You just keep what you got, brother. You know, I've got so much. I don't need it. Vayomer Yaakov. Now pay attention carefully. Alna. No. Imna matzasi chen veinecha. If I find favor, v'lakachta min chasi miyadi. Take my gift. Ki al kein reisi panecha kiros pnei Elohim vatirtzedi. I see you like I see an angel of God. Yaakov slips in a little subtle line over here. I see you like I see an angel of God. And he says, oh, well, you see angels? Yeah, like I've fought with angels, right? So it's just like you know, just let's get it clear exactly who you're dealing with over here, right? It's like the guy who says to the guy, listen, hi, I really like to get along because my trainer, the guy who gave me my black belt, the guy who gave me my karate, my martial arts trainer, who's the guy who gave me the black belt, he said that I'm supposed to get along with people. Let's try to get along. So you heard that the guy's a black belt. That message got across. But we learn it. Kachna es birkosi asher hevesi lach ki chanani eloki v'chi yesh li kol. Yaakov says, I have everything I need. Whatever we have, we should view it as I have everything I need. Esau says, I got lots. There's never enough. I got so much. Yaakov says, I have everything that I need. Yesh li kol. Vayiftzor bo vayikach. He urges him, and Esau takes the gift. And we learn over here that when the Jews, through history, have tried to survive, get the money into his hands. You got a bribe, and you got a bribe for our survival. Get it into his hands. Once it's in his hands, then the bribe has an effect. Make sure, don't walk away until you for sure he's taken it. Don't let him turn down the bribe, because it's only after he takes the bribe that the bribe's going to be effective. And yeah, there's a very funny story. It's a true story about the Reb Chaim Brisker. You've heard of Reb Chaim Brisker, right? He was the famous the way we learn Torah, it comes from Reb Chaim Brisker, the famous Reb Chaim. So in Brisk, he was the Rav of Brisk. And the Jews had they were suffering anti-Semitism in Brisk also. Where's Brisk? Lithuania, Russia, where is it? I don't know which one it's in. Somewhere over there. And there was always trouble. You know, they had a big Jewish community. It was a very big city. So there was a new police commissioner took over, a terrible, virulent anti-Semite, took over as the commissioner in Brisk, and immediately he instituted certain laws, anti-Semitic laws against the Jews. So Reb Chaim Brisker calls some guys, and he let it be known he does not take bribes. So Reb Chaim Brisker calls in the community leaders. He says, okay, here, take 2,000 rubles, and you go over and bribe him. We're going to have to get these laws changed. We can't, whatever the anti-Semitic Semitic laws were. He says, here, take 2,000 rubles and go bribe the guy. So they said to Reb Chaim, yeah, but he said he can't be bribed. He said, everybody can be bribed. Go bribe him. So they go to Reb Chaim Brisker, and they go to the police commissioner, and as soon as they walk in, he barks at them, I know what you're here for, get out. And they go back to Reb Chaim, and they say, sorry, he doesn't accept bribes. He says, give me the money. Just give me the money. So it's a boiling hot day in July. Reb Chaim takes the money, puts on a heavy overcoat, and he walks into the police station. He gets to the guard, and the guy says, tell him the rabbi of the Jews is here. So the guy figures he'll have a little fun with him. He says, all right, tell him to come in. So Reb Chaim comes in, and he says, listen, we'd like to have the decrees rescinded. The guy says, I'm not rescinding the decree, and Rabbi, I don't take bribes. But I do have one question. Why are you wearing an overcoat? It's a boiling hot day. So Reb Chaim says, my grandmother came to me in a dream last night, and she said it's going to pour. It's going to be a storm tonight. And the guy looks out the window. The sky is blue. It's a warm day. He says, it's not going to rain. He says, I'm telling you, my grandmother has never been wrong. It's going to pour. He says, it's not going to pour. What are you talking about? Reb Chaim says, listen, I'm willing to bet 2,000 rubles that it's going to pour. Right? The guy says, 2,000 rubles. So, okay, I'll take that bet. So Reb Chaim puts the money down on the table, and he walks out. And as soon as he walks out, this guy turns and he says, that Jewish rabbi is pretty smart. That Jewish rabbi is pretty smart, and he rescinds the decrees, right? He understood that he was bribed. He understood that he was bribed. That's get it into his hands. Get it into his hands. That's what Yaakov does over here. The first rule is get the money into his hands. Once it's in his hands, he loses all objectivity, and the bribe happens. What are we getting asked, Mayor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more. The question is like this: we learned from some dialogue when Hashem speaks to Rivka. She said, Hashem tells to Rivka that one of the brothers will serve the other, like generally speaking. And then when the bracha is given from Yitzchak to Esau, it says that he will serve his brother. And then there's something about the neck that we saw in the previous passage that Esau fell into Yaakov's neck, but it's supposed to be the other way around.
The bracha is that it depends where we're holding. When we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, they'll serve us. That was the bracha. When we're not doing, then we have to serve them. That was the bracha. So okay, that's what that was the kasher torid uparakta ulo me'alecha. That's good. That was the bracha. One will serve the other. Depends on how we're behaving. It all depends on our behavior. If we're behaving the way we should, like the time there was a Beis Hamikdash, Shlomo HaMelech was the king. All nations were submissive to Shlomo HaMelech. That was the pinnacle of success of the Jewish people. When the Jewish people been galus, exile, when we're not, then we have to serve them. Okay, now take a look. Esau offers that they're going to travel together. And Yaakov says to Esau, he says like this, Vayomer Nisa v'nelecha ve'elcha lo negdecha, Pasuk 12. Vayomer elav Adoni yodea ki ha'yeledim rakim. You know the children are young, they're soft. V'atzon v'abakar olos olai. U'defakum yom echad v'meisu kotav. If you force them to move very fast, they're not going to survive it. We can't do that. And this is again a projection of the Esau ideals versus the Yaakov ideals through history. The Esau ideal is adventure, excitement, live for the moment. Yaakov says, Jewish society is not fast-paced. Jewish society is cholent, right? We're not fast-paced. We take it easy. We work during the week. Our goal isn't adventure. Our goal isn't excitement. We're not looking for, we don't need the thrills of life. What we need is a goal in life, and we move towards that goal with self-control, where everything moves, and there's a Shabbos, and there's davening. There's always davening, right? And davening, by the way, that's when we start getting fast-paced, right? When it's davening, when we get to davening. My brother and I were trying to figure out which is the fastest davening in shul. There are certain parts of davening which defy physical law. Right, so so we had a couple of candidates. First of all, the V'hu Rachum on Mondays and Thursdays is certainly a candidate, right? Somehow the V'hu Rachum, I've been in shul where that big long V'hu Rachum could take 3 minutes on a good day. V'hu Rachum, next thing you know, he's putting his that. Aleinu is always a popular family favorite. Aleinu l'shabech l'nu, b'nei marva, but probably my all-time leading candidate, my candidate is Brich Shmei when they take out the Sefer Torah. Because it's all Aramaic, and it's a real tongue twister. And sometimes you go to these shows. I remember as a kid growing up because they used to sing the last part. So Brich Shmei, I remember they were like, they would sing the last part of Brich Shmei. Like, whoa, where did the middle part go? But we don't live with. We're not fast paced. We're not looking for adventure. A lot of times you see they used to have. I don't know if you ever saw Reader's Digest. Back in the day when it was decent, so you used to read. Everybody read Reader's Digest. So they used to have this. This one section was my favorite section. It was called Drama in Real Life. The drama in real life was always some guy, who got, like a guy was stuck alone on a glacier, with nothing but a donut, or something like that, or some guy whose girlfriend was being dragged off by a grizzly bear and he fought him off with the toenail clippers, and and every time you read this thing, read, wow, what drama, and you read this thing, you're just wondering, like, how did you get into this situation to begin with? Why were you on a glacier? Why were you anywhere near grizzly bears? We don't do that. About the most exciting thing we do. Is we have Malava Malka. That's about as risky as it gets. We're not like oh boy, I got to eat shalashudas. I'm full. Well, you got to have a kazayas. All right, here I go. Cover me. I'm going in. That's about as much risk as we take. We're not looking for risk. We're not looking for adventure. By the way, there's a very deep idea behind it. I once read also in Reader's Digest, this guy is going to go climb, I think Everest or K2 or one of these mountains where half the people never come back. And he's going on this expedition, and there's this teary farewell to his wife and his 3 children, and, I hope I make it, and this. And I'm reading this article, I'm thinking to myself, you don't have to go. It's not like nobody's forcing you. This isn't Vietnam where you've been drafted. No, nobody's forcing you to go. You could get up for work and go to work the next morning. You're an accountant, go to work. What do you got climbing mountains for? So part of the psychology of it, and by the way, this is the psychology of what do you call it? What's it called? Amusement parks. Right? So I don't know about you guys. I was a demon on about the go-karts. That's about as high off the ground as I ever got. Some of these guys, you're on these rides, like what's it called, the Wild Mouse or something. These things are, all these rides, they're constantly making new roller coasters that are higher and with a drop. I don't like that feeling. I don't like that feeling of feeling like I'm going to crash, and your heart is in your mouth, and everybody is screaming, and then finally the ride ends, and everybody's like, oh, it's good to be on solid ground again. Nobody forced you up there. You paid to go up there. Well, I don't know where's it coming from? You know where it's coming from? It's coming from a person. The emptier a person is, the less appreciation a person has for life. The more they need to be put into a situation of either real danger, like rock climbing or climbing mountains, where it's real danger. And then you survived it, so now I could appreciate life. It's good to be alive. An amusement park is a simulation of real danger, but it's coming from the same place. Wow, I survived it. I made it. Even though there's no real danger, except once in a while where somebody gets thrown off of a roller coaster. But generally people survive. But there's this simulation. A person who's content with life, I like Baba Metzia, right? And Baba Metzia is without being spun around, right? Maybe mentally spun around. Yeah, mentally we're spun around like nobody's business, right? But at no point do I feel that there's a life threat over here. And once in a while, if I get really daring, I play chess. But there's no what do you call it? There's no real threat. Why? Because I appreciate life. The less I appreciate life, the more I have to go climbing mountains. My father-in-law, we were once looking in Sports Illustrated, they had the world champion rock climber. These are guys who climb about 500 feet up in the air in like a ledge over there where those bricks meet the wall, a ledge like this. For these guys, they're climbing on a flat, I've seen these guys. So we're watching the world champion rock climber. He's wearing a loincloth, and he's about 300, 400 feet up in the air on a sheer ledge. And he's spread eagle on the ledge like this, and we're looking at each other like, okay, where does he go from here? What's the next move over here? These guys are, the world champion rock climber fell to his death from about 400, 500 feet. So you're playing with fire, but these guys do it because that's without that rush, there's no appreciation for life. That's Esau. Let's go try. Yaakov says we don't move fast paced. That's how we don't do that. Then the Gemara teaches us another lesson of how to deal with Esau. Yaakov says to Esau, now listen to this because the Gemara talks about this. Pasuk Yud Daled. Yavor na Adoni lifnei avdo. You go on ahead. V'ani esna leiti l'regel ha'malocha asher lefanai l'regel ha'yelodim. I'm going to go slow pace. Ad asher avo el Adoni Seir and eventually I'll meet you in Seir. Now Yaakov never gets to Seir. Later, the Gemara says there's the prediction in the future is in the future we're going to take it over. But Yaakov never goes to Har Seir. He sends Esau, you go off to Seir, where Esau lives, Esau's domain, and then I'll take we're going to go slow pace, and eventually I'll meet you there. So the Gemara says that if you're ever confronted by anti-Semites, and they say to you, where are you going? Always give them a farther location. If you're traveling from New York to Chicago, and the anti-Semites get on the train with you and say, where are you going? Oh, we're off to L.A. Because then when you have a chance, they'll be waiting longer than in Chicago. You get off the train. So the Panovich Rav happened to the Panovich Rav in New York. The Panovich Rav was fundraising. He came to New York. He was on the subway. And a couple of the locals noticed the potential victim. And they sat down near the Panovich Rav. And the Panovich Rav knew that there's trouble coming. So he says to these guys, he gets up and he says to the guys, hi, which stop do I get off to get to a certain place, which was much further than where he had to get to. So he asked, applying this principle, he said to these guys, before anything, where do I get off at a certain stop? So they said, oh, it's about 12 stops down the line. So now they're relaxed because they know they've got time to plan exactly what they're going to do to him. And then all of a sudden, at a certain stop, he waited to the last second. And at the very last second, he jumps off the train. And as the train pulls away, he just kind of waves to them, see you fellas, right? So the Gemara says that these anti-Semites met a group of Jews, and they said, where are you going to? And they said, we're going to a place called Kiziv. And that it turned out that they weren't. They stopped early. They said, are you disciples? You must be disciples of Yaakov Avinu. Because that's what Yaakov Avinu did to our forefather, Esau. Right? So they got off, and the Gemara says, if anybody ever asks you where you're going, unless it's somebody you know, always give them a further destination, because then you have a chance to get, they'll wait before perpetrating any harm, and that gives you a chance to get away. Okay, now go on ahead. I want to finish today because tomorrow I want to start Vayishlach. Okay, you have this entire adventure with Dinah on page 180. Where Dinah goes out, page 180, 6 lines from the top. Vateitze Dinah bas Leah, asher yolda liYaakov, liros bivnosa arz. Dinah goes out. And this is the story where she goes out to check out the girls in Shechem. She wants to see what's doing, what the latest styles, fashions, whatever she was looking at. And she gets violated by Shechem. And then Shechem makes a negotiation with Yaakov's sons. We want to marry your daughter. And they convince everybody to circumcise, and then Shimon and Levi go in and they annihilate all the men in the city. The way they did it, the commentaries say, is that after everybody, Shechem, who was the son of the mayor, his father's name was Hamor, Shechem ben Hamor, he convinces everybody to go and circumcise, because then we'll be able to intermingle with the Jewish people, and we'll actually take control of the Jewish people. So they all agree to it. So Rav Victor Miller points out, you see, when somebody is motivated, he was absolutely infatuated with Dinah. And when somebody is motivated enough, somehow he can convince all the men of the town to go and circumcise themselves as adults. So then the Medrash says what happened was they were all in pain. And on the third day, when the pain is most intense, Shimon and Levi made house calls. So they walked into one house and they said, we're good at this because we Jews, we circumcise. And maybe let's check on the patient. And everybody just wait out here. So they would go into the room where the patient is moaning and groaning, kill him, come out and say, okay, he needs a lot of rest now. Nobody should bother him for the next 12 hours. He should be okay. And they went from house to house. That's how 2 bar mitzvah boys went from house. That's how they were 13 years old. They went from house to house and they annihilated the entire city. Right? That's what the Medrash says. That's how they did it. Okay, it just says that they killed everybody. But they went, and with this strategy, they managed to annihilate. They said he needs plenty of rest. Right? They didn't say, we put him to rest, or that he should rest in pieces. Right? They just said, he needs plenty of rest. Okay, that's the story. That's the story. Now, if you take a look on page 180, it says, Vateitze Dinah bas Leah. So right there is the flaw. Because we have a pasuk that says, Kol kvuda bas melech pnima. The glory of a princess, meaning a Jewish girl, pnima, is inside. A Jewish woman stays in behind the scenes. By the way, if you notice that everything about a female is internal. Her anatomy is internal, male anatomy is external. She carries the baby internal. Everything is internal. Kol kvuda bas melech pnima. She remains behind the scenes. Once she goes out, that's where the trouble starts. So the commentator said, why does it say Vateitze Dinah? She went out. It should really say Vatovo. She came to Shechem. She arrived in a place called Shechem. Why is it that she went out? It says Vateitze Dinah bas Leah liros. It should say she Vatovo. She came to see the girls. Why did it? She wasn't going looking for boys. She went to see the girls. Nothing wrong with it. That's already a flaw. Vateitze Dinah is a flaw. She went out. She went out. Went out means she went out of her level. Her level is to stay in, and she goes out. So one of the commentaries points out the Al-Sheikh HaKadosh, who was a Kabbalist, by the way, He was in Sfas with the Arizal and with the what we call the Kabbalist Club in Sfas. Rav Shlomo Alkovitz, who wrote the Lechadodi, these are the great Kabbalists. The Alshich wrote a fabulous commentary on Chumash as well. And the Alshich says like this. You remember the Gemara, we spoke about the idea that Leah, when she got pregnant with her 7th child, she realized that if she has a boy, that's only going to leave opportunity for one boy for Rachel. And then Rachel will be less than either of the maidservants, which you have 2 already. So when she got pregnant, when she conceived the 7th child, what happens? She conceives the 7th child, and then she says a prayer that it should turn into a girl. She conceived a male, and she davened that it should turn into a female, and that became Dinah. So the Alshich says, right. But the original conception was a male. So she still had a certain male characteristic or tendency. That's why she went out. The going out of Dinah is from the time of conception that Dinah goes out, and as a result of going out, where's that coming from? Because she had a male tendency in her. And that's where the going out comes from. But there's a bigger question here. The commentaries say this was a punishment to Yaakov Avinu. Why was he punished? Because when Esau, in the epic meeting between him and Esau, where was Dinah? Dinah was very beautiful. Where was she? Yaakov had hit her in a box. Why? Because he doesn't want that Esau should take a fancy to her and see her take a fancy to her. So they say Yaakov Avinu was punished. Why? Maybe she would have married Esau and he would have done tshuva. I understand, what does that mean? So every Russia who wants to marry a from-based Yaakov girl, you got to let him marry her? I got a great shidduch for you. You got a Jewish gangster who wants to marry your daughter. You get punished if you don't make the shidduch. Well, I was actually thinking about a guy from Punovich. No, you got to give it to Esau. No, what's going on? Well, the answer, like Vayishlach. The answer is he's not punished for not letting her. He's punished because withholding her, when he withholds her from Esau, he should have felt a certain amount of, it should have hurt him a little bit that he can't do this. That's what the commentaries say. So Yaakov is taken to task for that, number one. Number two, here you are hiding her from Esau. Where's the supervision over here? Why is she left alone to be able to go out? So Yaakov gets punished. But the question, what about Leah? Why does Leah deserve a punishment? To the contrary, the only reason there's a Dinah is because of Leah's selflessness to daven that the baby should turn into from a boy to a girl. So why does Leah deserve this punishment? Good question, isn't it? It's a good question. You know what the answer is? It's not punishment. For Leah, it's not a punishment, because what happens? Dinah gets pregnant. And Dinah, when she gets pregnant, she has a daughter. This daughter's name is Osnat. What happens to Osnat? So the Medrash says the brothers wanted to kill her because they felt that the lineage goes after the father, and therefore she's actually a daughter of Shechem, and she's not part of the Jewish family. Yaakov Avinu held she is, goes after the mother. So what did Yaakov Avinu do? He gave her a pendant that was written in Lashon HaKodesh, and he put it around her neck. And he sent her off to Egypt. And she was adopted by who? Potiphar and his wife. Yosef ends up being in the same house as Potiphar and his wife. Mrs. Potiphar sees in the stars that she and Yosef are going to have descendants. That's why she chases Yosef around. That's her excuse for her infatuation, right? Remember the story? Mm-hmm. But she misread the stars. She was going to have descendants from Yosef. How? From her adopted daughter is going to marry Yosef. How did Yosef end up marrying her? Because when Yosef was in the chariot, when he was made the king, all the Egyptian girls were out there. They were all infatuated. They were all throwing things towards you. They're throwing jewelry and all sorts of ornaments towards Yosef. One ornament landed in many of them, but one of the ornaments that landed in the chariot that Yosef was in was the pendant that was thrown by Osnat. And Yosef picks it up. He says, "Hey, Lashon HaKodesh, there's a Jewish girl around here." And he traces and finds that it's that Osnat is actually a Jewish girl from the house of Yaakov, and Yosef marries Osnat. So what ends up happening here? Leah has a daughter who marries Yosef. Leah has a daughter, a granddaughter who marries Yosef, right? Yeah. Right? Dinah's her daughter, Osnat's the granddaughter, marries Yosef. That means Yosef is her son-in-law, her grandson-in-law. You wouldn't want a grandson-in-law like Yosef? That's her reward. For what she did for Rachel, all those years earlier, she davened the baby as a girl, a boy turned into a girl, she ends up with a Yosef as a grandson-in-law. That's the reward for Leah. say. You see that it's all, Yaakov gets a punishment, his daughter is violated. For Leah, it's an unpleasant beginning. But not all unpleasant beginnings mean that there's going to be an unpleasant end. Sometimes things are unpleasant in life because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually using that as a way to reward somebody. And therefore the reward that Leah gets is she gets Yosef as a grandson-in-law. Yes, Shlomo Yitzchak.
Yeah, I have a short question, Rav. So do most rabbis agree on the opinion that Dinah indeed inherits kind of with Yosef?
That's the what he...
Yosef does marries the Jewish, basically, girl.
That's one of the commentaries says that. Does everybody agree to it? Then everybody says everything. Not everybody says everything. One of them commentary says that. Yeah, yeah. It's an opinion. An opinion.
What happens next to Dinah? Short question.
What happens next to Dinah? The Medrash says that she refused to leave. What do you call it? Shechem's home until Shimon promised to marry her.
And she does.
She marries Shimon. Yeah. Her brother, which is permissible at the time. They were born with twins. That's what they married, so Shimon marries her. That's what the Medrash says. All right, everybody, see ya.